Okay. Hello. Good morning-ish, I guess. The camera adjustments continue as I try and find the ideal camera setup for me. This one is a bit of a problem, simply because I've had to zoom in considerably with my phone camera lens, and as you can tell, that's creating some issues with shutter speed, with flickering, with overall sharpness of the shot. So I'm just trying to figure this out, see what I can and can't do. I think this is going to be acceptable. There's quite a bit of futzing about I can do with Camo Studio, but unfortunately, just due to the nature of a virtual camera lens, all the image adjustments in the world that I make are just going to not be able to do much because of how, computers work and how these phones work. So I guess I'm just gonna have to deal with it for now. But that being said, hello. How are you guys? How are you doing? Good morning. It's like almost 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning for me. My wife is doing some work, and that kind of has left me to my own devices, and later on today I will do some work. But right now, I'm going to work on this lovely lad, who you can see is getting increasing amounts of detail since yesterday when I first started working on him. I'm doing a high contrast scheme with Mr. Garadon because I figured that I really want him to stand out amongst like the Imperial Fist units, so you could be able to pick him out of a lineup. So right now, he's gone from like a pretty dark red, almost to like a dark maroon, up to a fairly bright orange, which is actually the base coat that I usually use for doing Imperial Fists. So I'm trying a new technique that I learned, a new mindset, which was, the heck was it called? Like 80% of 80%. Every time I do a new layer, he gets 80% less coverage than the previous layer. So that's kind of what I'm working with right now. And hopefully I can continue with that. And now that I have the camera moved to somewhere that's a little less obtrusive, I can hopefully get in a little closer with my own face and really make sure that some of the details I have on him are smooth and good looking. So that's what I'm going to continue working on today. And let's hope that it turns out okay. I think the biggest thing for me is having to go back, do the back and forth between making sure that the previous layers blend into the new layers smoothly, and making sure that the new layers don't have too much coverage on them, right? So that's where I kind of am right now. I'm working on the Averland Sunset layer, which is not actually an incredibly bright yellow, but against everything else, with the contrast it creates, it's made it into a fairly bright yellow. So the goal now is to do everything I can to highlight the Averland Sunset, while also making some of the blends a whole lot more smooth as we go between Averland Sunset and this bright orange. So that's kind of my goal as I look at the Mini right now, and that's what I think I'm going to do to start us off with some touch-up to make sure that this guy looks as smooth as possible and doesn't have these like stark lines of separation between the previous layer and the new brighter layer, because that's been my bane whenever I try and do some of this non-metallic metal smooth blend stuff, is that the previous layer ends up always being very sharp and distinct in comparison to the new one, and that's not what I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the easiest amount of this and wet blend it a little bit to blur those lines just a little bit more. And this is also something that I will profess I'm not super good at, so using this as kind of a challenge to help make some of my blending better is definitely preferred. Is definitely welcome. So what I actually want to do, given that this is the brighter color, is I want to blend from the darker layer up to the brighter layer. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't make for the most captivating streaming possible, but when it actually dries, the payoff will be wonderful. And hopefully, in my case, will be worth it. Now, I will say, one of the things that drives me most nuts when I watch these master painters do their thing on YouTube is that obviously they have to cut it down for content and to keep everyone's attention, and I completely get that. But when they're showing a high-level technique, you'll see high-level painters, it seems like they're either speeding it up, first of all, because, you know, they want to show the process in something that takes less than 40 minutes to 4 hours, but at the same time, they're working at such a rapid rate and on such a small spot, you kind of get a general idea of what's supposed to be done, and then they transition to a new part or a new step, and all of a sudden, the last thing they were working on is absolutely freaking gorgeous. And I really don't know how they got there, because it feels like there's an intermediary step between what they were doing in the video and the time skip. You know what I mean? And so, while I love learning from these videos, and while I love seeing what these instructors are doing as they're trying to teach you how to do these techniques, I always feel like there's something lost in translation between the step where the model is prime black or has the base colors on it to the step where they're doing the next level of blending. And I feel like I can't get much out of that. But that's entirely a personal thing, so no one else has to agree with me there. My understanding, and the thing is, I guess I'm in that weird place where, like, I don't have the patience to watch one of the longer form videos that shows them meticulously going through the process, and that's what I really should be doing. But at the same time, I'm not getting anything from the sped up values, so it's maybe one of those things where I just need to knuckle down and really pay attention to one of these long form videos where they're actually showcasing their skills as opposed to speeding through it or to make it look good for YouTube. But I guess that's neither here nor there. I will say, the sped up videos definitely give you a fairly unrealistic goal to set for yourself if you're not careful. And I'm not saying it's their fault, this is entirely a me problem, but, you know, because it's sped up, their hands are moving 10 times faster or twice as fast as they normally would, and in my brain that makes me think, oh, that's the standard speed that I should be moving my brush at. And so when I go through and try and replicate what they're doing, I'm moving the brush at like warp speed. And it just looks absolutely ridiculous because I clearly don't have the refined control they do. And so what I end up making ends up being 10 times worse and 10 times sloppier. It's like, bro, it's sped up. Calm down. Calm down, calm down, calm down. But you know, that's just kind of what happens. So right now, I'm just trying to soften the edges between each of these individual lines by adding just a smidge of very watered down transition colors, right? And hopefully this will all look good by the time I'm done with it. Right now I think it looks pretty okay, but you know, I'm working on trying to make it look better. Get some more of that yellow in there. At some point what I need to do, and what I'm probably going to do if I don't start doing face cam stuff with my VTuber, is I really need to get another camera and make it like a palette camera, so that my painting palette is always visible, and that way you guys can be supremely disappointed with how sloppy and poorly kept it is, because I'm really lazy and I don't like throwing away palette paper if I still think it's useful. So I've got like month-old palette paper on here that has been through many cycles that I kind of water down tremendously and then wipe off to dilute the paint as much as I can, and then I just kind of leave it like that. And so it ends up looking like it's been staining for weeks. Okay, I think think that's going to be good. Afternoon. How's it going? I'm just repainting Tor Garadon for like the 8 millionth time as I'm trying to find like the perfect paint job to make him stand out as a commander for my army. And this one is definitely a lot more high contrast. And I really like how it's looking. It's just a matter of hitting those final layers where I get worried and I do some over coverage, and then he ends up looking real bad. So I'm trying to make sure my blends look good. I'm trying to make sure that all the layers look okay, and just hoping and praying that once I finally get to the highlight stages, he still has this really vibrant yellow highlight that makes this read as a high contrast yellow instead of as orange. Because, I mean, you can probably tell from the video feed that he's looking pretty orange right now. And that's fine, but what should happen is as I continue putting these highlights on smaller and smaller places, he, taking a break before you break something, trying to put together a drop pod. Yeah, I keep hearing that drop pods are absolutely miserable to put together, and I'm assuming, based on that reaction, that they're kind of frustrating. And isn't it because they have, like, multiple parts that all need to hang together perfectly as you try and glue it all in? That is my understanding with drop pods. Which sucks, because I want a drop pod. They're iconically 40k, and I don't have one. And I've got a Space Marine army, so it makes no sense to not own one of the more iconic pieces of 40k, you know, symbolism. Like in the same way, I don't have a Rhino, which feels really weird, so I want to get a Rhino. I feel like I want to get all these firstborn kits before they cycle them completely out in favor of the Primaris line, you know? Honestly, just 3D print one. I did, but it came out really chonky, and I honestly didn't like how heavy it was and how fragile it felt, because it did have the open hinges so that you could, if you wanted to, have it open or have it closed. But because it was so much heavier than the real model, I was just afraid it was going to break something in storage, or it itself was going to break. So it was one of those feelings. That's kind of been my biggest thing. I think maybe if I were to, you know, 3D print it using an FDM printer, that might solve a lot of the issues. But that's always so much less precise with its measurements. I'm kind of leery about doing that too. But yeah, at some point I'll do something like that again. Okay. Again, getting some of that yellow in there, getting some of that orange. I don't even know if he's still on camera right now. Toy Soldier, you can always go with the Deimos. Those should stick around long enough after the firstborn kit's going away. They're more iconic. They're an updated original. That's also really fair. Thank you, Toy Soldier of Fortune. With the GW one, you feel like you want to break it. That's absolutely fair. I don't know. I mean, like, as with many other people, one of the first exposures I had to the aesthetics of 40k was Dawn of War. And Dawn of War, you know, has all of the iconic firstborn units in it. And so if I were to buy it, I'd probably want the original firstborn one, right? It's kind of like one of my other buddies who wants to make a traditional Space Marine army. He doesn't want you Primaris units. He doesn't want any of that stuff. He wants to have an army like you could make in Dawn of War, just with the Ultramarine color palette. So I think he relented when he found out that Marneus Calgar had done the Primaris thing. And I got him a Marneus Calgar as like a wedding gift for being one of... Not my best man, I forget what the rest of that retinue is called. But for being part of that thing. And so he says, like, that's the only Primaris unit I want. Everything else, I want Firstborn. I want it to look like it could roll out on Dawn of War. And so, like, he wants the old tanks with the tracks. He wants the old Dreadnoughts, the old Whirlwinds. He just does not want anything Primaris. And I think that's kind of where I am. It's like the Deimos drop pod, if I recall right. Doesn't it have claws? Or are you talking about the rhinos? Either way, I mean, the Deimos rhino's fine. That would be something that I'd consider. But, like, the drop pod, I know that they have another one with a whole bunch of claws to act as, like, landing claws for it to stick in the side of walls and whatnot. But the original drop pod is just such an iconic look that I'd want to do that. But yeah, I've considered getting a Deimos Rhino. Once I have some more money, and I can really kind of customize my Imperial Fist army, I'm going to do a lot of crazy shit with it. Okay, let's see. I probably ought to do an orange highlight on that inner leg. I'm talking about the Rhino. The claw drop pod is the Charybdis. Thank you, yeah. All these names. Yeah, the Deimos Rhino is close enough. That's one I've considered getting as well. I actually 3D printed a whirlwind, and I think because it was a 3D print and they had to take some liberties, they based it off of the Deimos platform. So it definitely doesn't quite look like a proper 40K whirlwind, but it's close enough for proxy games and for casual games that I'm okay with it. So that might be something I do. Hopefully by April we'll finish this custom chapter. Yeah, you've been working on that thing for years now. It's going to be really cool when you can finally field the entire thing. Hopefully your interest in 40K will not have been too much replaced by the old world. But yeah, I'm not super interested in playing the Horus Heresy, because I really don't want to have to learn a whole new set of rules for playing with my Space Marines. But I love that the Horus Heresy is introducing this almost all-new aesthetic to Warhammer. That's reintroducing like old models and old art designs, and also making a lot of it plastic, and therefore, you know, much more durable than the Forge World stuff, and more lightweight. Still got the Tau to finish in the Votan. I might get another model done by April. I'm so slow. Yeah, I'm really lucky in that up until recently I was a school teacher, which meant I had plenty of free time to like work on my paint jobs after work. And right now I'm in between jobs, so other than studying for certification tests, I've got plenty of time to kind of putz around. So I've had a lot of time to catch up on my painting, because I had to leave teaching due to some medical issues, and those had left me pretty unmotivated to paint. And so I'm trying to get back into streaming to help with that, but at the same time I'd also love to get back into painting more regularly. And yeah, I sold my Tau army a while ago. I think I sold it actually to get a Votan army, which I then painted up like Among Us. And then I sold that too because I realized I wasn't going to play as it. And I don't remember where that money went. But that's okay. Okay, it looks like I've gotten everything highlighted up to at least yellow-orange. So now the next thing for me to do is to go ahead and highlight everything further with just the Averland Sunset. So let's go into Averland Sunset and pray I don't overdo it. In some of these places, it looks like I already hit it. So let's hope, because as I was saying earlier, the whole mantra for this mini is 80% of 80%. Just hit some of these areas with about 80% of the area that you covered in the previous layer. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do right now, because this high contrast stuff is honestly really daunting as I'm trying to learn placement, because studying different like art references hasn't helped me as much as I would have liked it to. So I'm kind of having to learn this blind. But honestly, this is working out pretty okay. I mentioned it yesterday, but a content creator who deserves far more followers than he currently has, Phalan Miniatures, I think it's PH3LAN Miniatures. They do these great tutorials for what I would consider personally to be fairly high-level complex painting techniques. Averland is so gritty and hard to work with. I can't imagine trying to use it for a highlight step. This isn't even a highlight. That's the crazy thing. right now, this Averland is like one of the mid-tones. I'm eventually going to go up to like Averland mixed with Dorn Yellow to create an Ice White. And then eventually possibly up to just straight Dorn Yellow for the highest highlights, or maybe even a white. But, I don't know. Averland was the first yellow I ever worked with when I started painting Warhammer minis. So, my understanding is that as a yellow paint, it's remarkably resilient and pigmented compared to other ones. But it's kind of become my comfort paint because I've used it for... I've been painting Imperial Fist now for 4 years? There's actually a blind guy who paints minis on YouTube. That's got to be interesting to watch. I can't imagine trying to paint this stuff without... is he, like, completely blind, or is he legally blind? Because I know there's different levels of severity to blindness. And I know, like, for example, Guy from Midwinter Minis is colorblind. But, and he's, like, red-green colorblind. And that's just kind of had him lean a certain way with how he paints his minis and the color schemes he chooses. But I can't imagine being blind, probably legally. That's still fair. I mean, I can't imagine trying to paint these things when everything looks like it's through Vaseline-covered glasses. 80% of 80%. So what I think has been kind of cool about this step is that because of how close together each of these colors are, it's almost hard for me to see where my highlights are landing. And I think that's kind of the point, because you want each layer to blend in real nicely to the previous layer. So if the highlights are becoming almost indiscernible, then I guess I'm succeeding. And I actually hit most of the Averland highlights yesterday, so I think all that's really left for me, probably the top of them, all that's really left for me to do is go ahead and make that final step up to the Dorn Yellow Averland Sunset and hope that everything goes well. Which, I mean, based on how it's looking, everything's going to be... Oh, nope, I've got this part up here to do. Is cowling over his head. Speaking of, if any of you have not seen the key art for Tor Garadon that they've been putting out in the books now that he's a character, starting with, like, 8th edition, I guess, you should go ahead and look up the key art for Tor Garadon, because the way he's drawn, the way he's painted and depicted is just so ridiculously over the top that I, like, immediately fell in love with the character. Because he's in Gravis armor, and he's, like... I don't know what the proper word is. Trundling? Because it's not a walk, it's not a run. He just looks like he's kind of waddling through the battlefield as, like, bullets are kind of pinging off of him, and he's just screaming to no one in particular. And, like, the armor's way too big. It looks like he's in Terminator armor meant for an adult. He's a very gray child. It's one of my favorite pieces of 40k artwork, and it's probably why he's one of my favorite characters. Because obviously he hasn't shown up a lot in the lore, but it's just a ridiculous piece of art. Okay. So I think, because of all the work I did last night, he doesn't have a whole lot of yellow that I need to hit him with for the Dorn Yellow, or for the Averland Sunset. So I guess the next thing is to move on to the Dorn Yellow Averland Sunset mix. Possibly do a lighter highlight in there. Possibly do a lighter edge highlight right here. I'm not exactly sure. Come on, come on. There we go. That'll work. Okay, I'm gonna stick him in my little painting caddy. I'm gonna grab me some Dorn Yellow, which is this really pale yellow. And I had seen a lot of people using Ice White as a, as like a highlight color. And I couldn't find Ice White, so I tried to look for the Games Workshop equivalent, and it was completely useless. They said, like, Aerial Yellow or Flash Gets was close, and they're way off. So I went with the one that visually looked closest to Ice White. or to ice yellow, or whatever it is. So here we go. Wish me luck. Gonna mix that together, make an incredibly pale yellow, and I guess since I've started with this knee scallop every time. Just a little bit, nothing too egregious. And yeah, that's definitely getting the brightness we're looking for. Okay. Sorry for the silence, guys, but I gotta hold my mouth just the right way to make sure that I'm hitting these highlights. BB Spiel, the German guy. That's amazing. I'll have to give him a check out, because just the concept of painting while legally blind is nuts to me. So if that gentleman is pulling it off, incredible kudos to them. Okay, I think I need to mix more because I'm starting to run a little weird on this. Okay, same kind of thing, just again 80% of 80%. Just a little bit of a highlight. There we go. That looks bright. It's exactly what I want. Same thing with the highlight in here. I don't want it to cover the entire area, just a smidge of smidge. Put it in there. Hopefully the new music isn't too off-putting. My license ran out with Epidemic Studio, and I don't have the money to replace it, so I've made the switch over to free YouTube music with hopes that I don't get copyright struck. And I guess right now it seems to be doing okay, because I think my last video was fine. So here's to hoping it remains that way. And actually, I think this might end up having to be the last color. I'm running out of room to highlight. And if this is all doing okay, then I really don't feel a need to go any more in-depth with the highlighting. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. That's the kind of brightness that I want. You did when you streamed NHL 24 last night? You got copyright struck? That's silly. I understand why, because these companies are getting like hyper protective of their brand and their audio, but it's still friggin' annoying, because it's like you put it in the game, and I know you have the license to use it there, but there should also be some inclusion of a license to allow you to just stream with the game audio. That's been happening to Doig and Swift a lot. And it's one of the reasons why they switched over to basically doing something similar to what I'm doing. They were playing Kingdom Hearts as part of Christmas and their celebration of Christmas. And every time they would go to the Colosseum in the Hercules world, or they would, you pilot the gummy ship and whatnot, they would get copyright struck for an extended period of time. Because I guess Disney Squaresoft put some pretty heavy restrictions on those songs, which kind of stunned me, because everything else they did was fine. All the other music in the game, all the other audio, they even played like some other audio from some other IP that they were afraid they were going to get copyright struck for, and they were perfectly fine. So I'm not going to claim I understand how the copyright striking works entirely. Though I did hear that there have definitely been cases where people who don't own the right to music will take music that's meant to be free use or fair use and they'll register a remix version they did where they add like a trap beat underneath it or something, and that allows them to copyright strike the originals and other fan stuff that have used it, even though they were legally allowed to do so by the fair use policies that YouTube and Twitch have. And so overall, it's just really annoying that bad faith actors are ruining what's supposed to be a fairly straightforward privilege, you know? Okay. Go ahead. Let's not ruin this guy. But yeah, I feel like if it's in a video game, then it should be pretty well recognized that it doesn't fall under the DMCA policy or whatever. That's silly. With certain licensed tracks. Speaking of NHL, I haven't played an NHL game in like over a decade. I think the last one I legally owned was NHL 14 or NHL 2K14. I forget. It was back when 2K still made NHL games, for one. And I remember being enamored with those games because I thought they were super freaking cool, and I had friends who were really into hockey at the time. But I was never any good at them. And that always kind of sucked. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do the lines here. Yeah, I think this guy is turning out pretty okay. Hey QB, how's it going? Same with Burnout Paradise. No way of turning off the music, so I had a GNR and kill switch blaring and got copyright. Well, that sucks. I licensed music. You know, licensed music. Okay, so I think if I want to, I made a layer a little bit too obvious. So I believe I'm going to go back and do a little bit of repair work right here to eliminate that ultra stark line of distinction. And hopefully that will blur it out a little bit. Okay. He's getting all bright, and I really like how he looks. Oh, I never did that one, did I? Yep. Now, it's just going back and trying to hit all of the little spots that don't have the brightest highlight, and hoping that my hand is steady enough that I don't accidentally smudge a previous layer. There we go. Speaking of Burnout, that's another game I haven't played in well over a decade. I had a friend in college who was really into those kind of games. But he kind of stopped playing them around the time that he met me, so when I met him, he showed them to me, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But then I don't think I ever saw them again. I think he was really tickled that that the car I owned at the time was in one of those like Need for Speed games, and it was definitely not the kind of car you'd expect because it was a 2003. I was gonna pop it to the shop, but it's decided to throw it down. Got him into Warhammer? No, unfortunately, I didn't get into Warhammer until we kind of dropped out of communication with each other. Though I'm not sure that this would be the kind of game he would enjoy. He might have. I think he was into like model making and whatnot. And I know he was into Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. So I think seeing an obscenely bizarre version of it would have tickled his fancy. It's decided to throw it down. I'm not sure what you mean there. Did you accidentally throw your model? Did the drop pod fail in its re-entry to orbit? There we go. No, I've gotten a bunch of other friends into Warhammer, though. Or at least tried to. Unfortunately, this game is so prohibitively expensive that even with 3D printing and proxies, they just don't have the economic investment in time and money. So we haven't been able to play as often as we would all like to. Okay. Oops. That's actually a perfect little smudge for me to play with, because we're going to just drag that across the previous highlight. And there we go. Good enough. But yeah, no, now there's like 3 local game stores that do some kind of Warhammer promotion and some kind of Warhammer gaming. But my general anxiety makes it a little difficult to go into those places to be like, hey, do you want to play a game? That, and it's just a whole lot of effort. I'd rather just play from home because I've got more than enough room. Okay. Though a friend and I did do that once. We went to one of the local game stores and used their terrain and whatnot. It was kind of neat seeing like unified, on-theme, wall-painted terrain, and it did add quite a bit to the game that we had. So at some point, I will be inspired enough to finish painting my terrain, but fortunately today is not that day. Okay. I feel like if I was being really squirrely, I could do a little bit more highlights on his big power fist. I don't feel like these got highlighted enough. And then through those highlights, I can go even brighter on some of the spots that I missed. Didn't miss, but didn't quite hit as well as I could have. And that will allow even more contrast around his giant hurt you bad fist. There we go. There we go. And then mix that in with the ice yellow. I've been looking at the Star Wars games, especially Armada, not to play just for the ships. Yeah, the person who got me into Warhammer, actually, he was really big into, I think it was Armada. That's the one with the ships, right? That's the one that has, like, the spaceship dogfighting. He was really big into that because his friends got him into Armada. And he was super into that, and he was trying to get us interested. And I've never been a huge Star Wars fan. Not because I don't like it or anything, but just it never really caught and kept my attention. So I played it, and it was fine, but it wasn't something at the time that I really wanted to have a huge financial commitment in. And by the time I was starting to warm to the idea, he was a little bit out of it because his friends had all moved into Warhammer. And so he spent like $300 on all of the Star Wars Armada stuff. And then by the time he had gotten his army up and he was ready to play, his friends were like, hey, Warhammer. Not Armada. Armada is, I don't remember the names. They've got like 8 different games. Not the skirmish-based one. The one that has the spaceships that you fly around on a giant mat that's supposed to be the void of space or whatever. But yeah, like as soon as he got his army ready to go, his friends had all moved on to Warhammer. So he was a little bit crestfallen and really was reticent to get into Warhammer and waste that money. But his friends were so into it, they just started buying him stuff. And so he started getting an AdMech army, like, put together. And he thought that I would enjoy the game, so we kept kind of, you know, being like, hey, you should play Warhammer, you should play Warhammer, I think you'd like Warhammer. And eventually, I got into it. And unfortunately, that was around the time 9th edition started, and the AdMech friggin' suck in 9th edition. After their one nerf, and they were just so complex and so difficult for him to play that he just fell out of love with the game. And so eventually, he traded me his AdMech army if I bought him some Imperial Knights. And now he's putting together an Imperial Knights army at about, I think, 1,000 points. And I have what is an increasingly, or a decreasing amount of AdMech points-wise, that eventually I want to get back up to 2,000 points, so that I can continue playing that awful army in his honor. But I think right now, the priority for growing them is like near the bottom of my priority list, because after repainting the high contrast Death Guard, it really made me want to rebuild a Death Guard army again. So I've got to go ahead and build that, and I want to build a Sisters army, and I want to build a an Orc army. So I've got a lot of different things on my plate, and on top of that, I'm, like I've mentioned before, in between jobs, so I don't have any money coming in. So 40k is kind of not high on my priority list right now in terms of purchases. But that's okay. I've got plenty of things to paint. Before the job transition happened, I had exchanged my painting services for some board games. And so I have like all of the Cursed City army line to paint. And I have a whole bunch of minis from Gloomhaven to paint. So I've got plenty of stuff to do. I just kind of need to find the time and the motivation to do it. And unfortunately, I'm starting to learn pretty rapidly that my attention swings violently from one thing to another with mini painting. And so while I was painting the Cursed City models for a little while, repainting Tor Garadon and my other Imperial Fist HQs has kind of caught my eye right now. So at some point I'll get the rest of that painted, just not today. Let's see, I think I can probably go a little bit higher. Yeah, there we go. Next, I gotta do his smaller arm. And actually, oh my goodness, I have not done his elbow bit at all. I'll have to get that later. But I gotta do his left side now, as I kind of traverse back and forth on this guy's model with no real plan in mind. But that's okay. But yeah, so he was having more fun in 10th edition in general. But unfortunately, the AdMech just continued to be far too frustrating for him to play, because he didn't have the time to like sit down and learn the complex order of operations that is the AdMech army. And so at some point, we'll find more time to sit down and play some more Warhams. But until then, we're all kind of in a holding pattern. Okay, go on that. Give that a little bit of a highlight. And yeah, this new camera angle, while it's making actual focusing on the model on the camera very difficult, I'm definitely able to get in closer to the model itself and hit some more like precision paint strokes with it. So I kind of approve, I guess. Okay. There we go. Let's see. Let's go ahead and go back up to the orange, yellow, because I seem to have missed that. And actually, let's go all the way back down to orange so that I can hit his little hip thingy, or his little elbow thingy over here. And we'll just slowly build up these two colors, because he's going to have these weird, suspiciously maroon sections to his armor plating, and I do not want that. There we go. Mix that in with the yellow. 80% of 80%. There we go. That's actually looking pretty good. I don't know if you can see it, but the little bit that's almost hidden by his pauldron and his wrist, with a few simple thin layers, is starting to have a highlight to it. And that makes me happy. Yeah, that looks good. Easy squeezy. There we go. I'll have to give that a closer look outside of the glaring studio lights, but I think that really made his right arm come together. Fantastic. Left arm is looking pretty good. A little bit too messy there on the transitions for his elbow, but easily fixable. Add a little bit of water in that. Take the water out. That's something I find kind of funny about doing some of this blending, is it's like, add the water, now take it out, now put it back on, now take the water out again, now add more water, now take the water out. Because you're trying to like manage the correct levels of moisture in the brush when you do some of these blends. And it just ends up being a big old mess. There we go. There we go. Unfortunately, this part is being a bit of a hassle because it's just so... It's at such an awkward angle, but hopefully it'll look okay when everything is said and done. Actually, that looks like it's going to be fine. Last little bit... Well, I gotta do the backpack, but I gotta hit that. Wait. I think I gotta hit down here just a little bit more. And then back here. And then his backpack. And then I think he'll be close to done. At least with this layer of his very complex armor color scheme. And then I can move into doing like the cables and his face. And all the other fun parts that I haven't been able to hit yet. Because I've been so focused in on doing his armor. There we go. And a little bit up here. That was way too much, but I'll be able to blend that back down. A little bit right there. Blend it back down with some watered down orange. Watered down orange, thank you. A little bit of that yellow, just make this horrible slurry. And we can actually blend all of that back down. I'm at the point where I think I need to get a new brush. This one's starting to lose its ultra fine tip pretty badly. But actually, that looks like it's going to be okay. Okay, continuing the rest of his leggy. I don't know. I heard recently in the rumor mill that the next faction that's going to be coming out that they're introducing for 40k is going to be Agents of the Imperium, which has a bunch of units that really haven't had a home and have been allies for like the Imperial Guard or for like Space Marines, and those include things like Inquisitors and the different assassins and that kind of thing. But the rumor is that the next allied force, the next loyalist force, or whatever you want to call it, is going to be Agents of the Imperium. And so that's where they're gonna group them all together, and that's where they're going to put the Death Watch even, because the Death Watch have kind of just felt like a very sparsely touched upon Space Marine chapter. So my understanding via the rumor mill is that the summer release is going to be a codex that kind of unifies all of them together under the title Agents of the Imperium, and that way the Death Watch can be part of a codex and not just a supplement, and all of those other units will have army rules and a home instead of just kind of free-floating everywhere. So, I guess that's exciting. Because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like the Imperium has enough armies. But at the same time, I don't want to yuck anyone else's yum who might be excited that the Agents of the Imperium are finally going to have a home. And I think it was Volrak, who tends to be fairly good with his rumors and whatnot. He stated that they're going to each get their own army box. There's going to be an army box for like the Ordo Xenos and the Ordo Hereticus and the Ordo Malleus. And I don't remember any of the other ones. But that each of them are going to get their own bespoke army box when this happens over the summer. And those will be bases to start armies. And I suppose it makes sense, because in a way, these are kind of like the Imperium's answer to the demons, I guess? The warp demons? Chaos demons? But I don't know. I don't know. Unless they're planning on like a huge release with a whole bunch of different, you know, bespoke units. It just feels like it's going to be really, really shallow in terms of unit diversity. But maybe that's where the Death Watch come in, even though technically they're Ordo Xenos. Maybe they're supposed to be the big unifying factor there. All I know is I was getting really excited for the eventual Emperor's Children release that I thought was going to happen soon. But it looks like that's not going to happen for a while, which I guess makes sense, because I think I remember hearing that the new edition of Age of Sigmar is going to come out, which is starting to tell me that time is happening way too quickly for my liking, and I'd like to get off the ride, because I thought Dominion had just come out, like the 3rd edition. So I'm a little overwhelmed by the fact that they're doing that. And with that being the case, that means there's going to be a big old release box for Dominion, or for 4th edition Age of Sigmar, I guess. And they don't want, you know, a really big important army release competing with that over the summer. So that's why they're not putting the Emperor's Children brandy new bespoke units up against it in like a release frenzy. Which again makes sense, but I was hoping for Emperor's Children this summer. Though I suppose, now that I'm not on a school system, a school schedule, all of that information means a whole lot less to me, because hopefully by then I will be gainfully employed in a 12-month job, and the seasons will have a whole lot less weight and importance in my life. But who knows? Who knows how things will be going for me then? There we go. Oh, there goes the pup. He must have heard someone coming at the door. Or watching someone walk across the street across from the house. Okay, again. Patient, precise strokes. 80% of 80%. Don't want to cover up everything, because then it'll be uncommonly bright. Or not uncommonly, unrealistically bright. There we go. Now he's got a little bit of highlight down at his leggy. Leggy! Oh man, I just realized I've got all of this this painting to do, where I've got to put like black cabling and you know, black on the ribs of the body glove. There is a very high opportunity here for me to mess these up really badly. Okay, that's gonna have to be gooder for what I'm doing. This is not going to be seen a whole lot, because he's going to be on a base, but I figure I'd at least give an honest attempt at putting some degree of highlighting on the back of his little, whatchamacallit. What else can I do here? Do a little bit more. No, I already got that. I already got that. I already got that. Okay, I guess it's time to move on to his backpack. Maybe I should actually go back and fix that section of his leg that I just hecked up. Mix that in with a whole bunch of water. Get the water back out of it. And let's blend that in a little bit more carefully. There we go. There we go. That's a little better. But yeah, he's coming along. He got this incredibly, like, really saturated orange to yellow conversion, and I'm pretty happy with how it looks. He's gonna really explode some eyes on the battlefield. Before, you know, a tail railgun blows him off the battlefield entirely and he gets exploded. But you know what? That's okay. I can survive with that. What was I just about to hit? That must have been the shoulder pad, because it still has, like, that's way too wet. Yeah, for a guy that's supposed to be part of an army that specializes in fortifications, Garadon is not very survivable. Though I suppose they don't want him to be a walking fortress. That would be just a bit too much. They did give, yay, it's built, not going to touch it till it's completely dry. Exactly. The pictures I've seen of people, like, clamping that thing together and rubber banding it all together so that it doesn't move at all and it keeps its pressure fit, that's intimidating. And hopefully, it means that, you know, those models stay pristine until they're dry. I mean, it was obviously not to that scope and obviously not as bad, but I put together a Vindicator recently because I finally had some extra money to buy a Vindicator tank, which I've wanted for years, because I feel like it's peak Imperial Fist silliness. But I remember the instructions on that being kind of, I don't want to say vague and confusing, but they were definitely not as precise as the current Games Workshop stuff. That's exactly what you did. Absolutely fair. Like, they weren't as precise and readable as the current Games Workshop instructions, which also I think isn't particularly fair because, like, the tank was not a complex vehicle to put together, right? So I don't want to be like, they left these instructions that gave us no help. The Vindicator tank was not difficult to put together. But at the same time, their instructions were very like, yeah, this piece that's shaped like this goes there. Good luck figuring out which one it is. And so I definitely get, like, I couldn't imagine trying to put together a drop pod with that degree of lack of specification, lack of clarity. That's the word I'm looking for. Okay, I think that'll do it for that. Mix back in some of this previous yellow to help with this blend, because this came out looking like butt. There we go. There we go. So yeah, I'm sending all of the positive vibes that the God Emperor could. That drop pod seals perfectly, and everything looks great when you're done with it. If I recall right, you can even leave the hinges open on the doors so that you can deploy them. I saw this really cool short clip someone made of their drop pod being spring-loaded, so that when you dropped it on the table, like, the doors sprung open. And I think that was the other reason I wanted a drop pod, because that idea is just so freaking cool. You know what I mean? And I'd love to own something like that, even though I do not have the mechanical prowess to make something. I've really got to stop overloading this brush, because I think that's what's killing my ability to paint this model. It better stick or it goes in the bits box. That's fair. I mean, at that point, I'd almost just step on it and turn it into a piece of terrain if it decides to go all higgledy-piggledy on you. Because it's like, is it even worth it at that point? Let's try... I have a feeling this lighting is not going to be at all parallel to the other side, and I'm just completely messing this up. That's a-okay. Get it on there. Oh, that's why, because I started on here since this is front-facing. And then I worked my way back. I was like, why does this feel different? Because you did it different. Absolutely fair. Okay, let's try and make it look somewhat congruent. That'd be great. My goodness, I don't know if it's just the lighting, but it is coming through looking like it's actually whiting out on screen. It is exceptionally bright on the camera feed. And I guess that's good, because it means that it is going to read as bright, but I hope that isn't straining anyone's eyes. There we go. Just doing a simple glaze layer on top of the previous layer, pushing paint towards the brighter layer to hopefully soften the borders and create a better blend. Actually, let's take some water from the previous layer, water that down, and let's push it back the other way. Let's see what happens. What happens is, hopefully, between the two pushing back and forth, it ends up creating a less distinct border, a separation between the previous darker layer and the new brighter layer. I think that's going to have to do. Have you had that happen with a model where you just became so frustrated with it that you did throw it in the bits box, or is this like the first one that's caused you that kind of ire? Because I feel like that would be a fairly common thing with certain models. Like, I've heard that the Necron, I don't remember what it's called, their barge, their troop carrier model, their attack tank, it looks like a floating rib cage. That model, your first one, yeah, I guess that's understandable. The first one can be incredibly frustrating, and you've been in this hobby for a lot longer than I have, so I can't imagine what that first model would be. But yeah, for the life of me, I don't remember what it's called, but it's the Necron big vehicle. And I've heard that thing is an absolute menace to try and put together. And so I guess I'm happy that I didn't really get into Necrons, because I can see how that would be immediately off-putting as someone entering the hobby. I guess, like, what is it, the Catacomb Command Barge? I don't remember the specific names. But yeah, just super glad that I started with a fairly new line in, like, the Tau. Well, the models I was getting was part of the fairly new line, I guess. And went into Space Marines. I had a fairly smooth transition into the hobby. And then Death Guard, because I think that was my my progression. It was like Tau, then Space Marines, then Death Guard, and then Sisters of Battle and a whole bunch of other stuff. There we go. Desolation Barge? Yeah, that sounds about right. All I know is it's the one that looks like a combination between a ribcage and a gallows, or galleon. Which I think is the point. It's meant to look like one of those old-fashioned ancient ships if you stripped away the planking and left it exposed. Because they're really supposed to be going hard into that, like, ancient Egypt theme. So the idea of a bunch of them having to row oars that I guess don't exist in Necron technology, but evoke that visual resemblance is the point. This is a Zelda, I think. Okay, back in a bit. It's only local. Fair enough. Okay, then just a little bit of a highlight in between the grates. Bah, 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 bah. Doing the part where my voice is getting really kind of like froggy because I'm focusing so hard in what I'm doing. I just need to do the thing. I can't sound good on the mic. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Let's see. What else needs to be done? Probably not a whole lot, because, again, this is supposed to be the very, very faintest highlighting on this guy. And once I kind of finish that, then I can move on and start blocking in some of the other colors. And at some point, I'll learn how to adequately block in a dome. Like, I really should just go online and look up how to do their backpacks. There we go, there we go. There we go. No, I think... There we go. I think on the sides I would be served to actually go ahead and fill some of that in, because that's just uncommonly dark right there. Gosh. I can't imagine being able to walk to some hobby shops. I live too far away from pretty much all of them. Walkable cities are like a pipe dream in certain parts of the US, like where I am. But I just remember being in college and really enjoying the fact that I could walk basically anywhere. And it would be super cool if at some point we could get back to that. And I've seen that mentioned as like a meme. It's like you don't miss college, you miss having walkable cities where everything is within relative convenience. Whether it be shopping, friends, or like leisure. The fact that everything was close by was just a lot of the good brain juice that we don't get in our current drivable cities. Okay, yeah, before I go nuts, I think I'm going to actually call... I say as I go to nitpick some more. I'm going to actually call his armor done, because if I don't, I'm going to go insane trying to continue to paint him. So yeah, the armor is done. Next is to move on to every other part of the model. So eventually he's going to have a really deep purpley red cape. You have to do some brown for the leather, blacks, greens, reds. I think next I'm going to move into some black coloring. So let's go all the way down. We're actually going to go ahead and go into like a bluish black, because that's more fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to scale color deep blue. I'm going to mix that in with some Vallejo, just straight black. We're going to see how all this looks. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep the rest of my colors on the palette, because I don't want to accidentally get rid of them when I need to do touch-up. Fairly large amount of black, because I'm covering a lot of it. Add some more water to the palette, because it looks like it's drying out a bit. Yeah. I've also got a vortex mixer, which is helping me, you know, mix these paints without going insane. Unfortunately, the biggest problem I have with the Scale 75 bottles is they do a very poor job of like, not clogging. So I've had this pretty consistent problem with this Scale 75 bottle of having to clear clogs out of the nozzle, without accidentally exploding it all over the place. So hopefully that'll all work. Additionally, I didn't think about this. I've got his eyepiece to do. He's got this, like, incredibly tiny... I don't even know if you can see it, but he's got this incredibly tiny eyepiece that's supposed to go in front of his left eye that I've left black. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it black until I finish painting his face and try and attach it to the model. And from there, I'll use a tiny, tiny brush, and I will do everything in my power to try and make it look okay. Because I think, given the level of detail on the model, I'm going to do everything non-metallic metal, and we're going to pray to the painting gods that it all turns out okay. Okay, yeah, that's a good rich black that I want, like a bluey black. Because I want there to be some color depth here, and going straight black loses a lot of color depth. At least that's what it feels like for me. So hopefully, by introducing just a little bit of blue, when you look at it, your eyes will be tricked and you'll see a little more color depth than just straight black. And of course, the other problem I'm going to have is that this brush has become kind of my base coating brush, but it's a Winsor & Newton Series 7 number 1, and so it's got Kolinsky sable bristles that I've absolutely ruined, and now they are a bit of a mess. Where'd the music go? There'd the music go. Okay. So hopefully this will all look okay when everything is said and done. Now, something I saw, and this came from the same non-metallic metal video I was watching from Phelan Miniatures, is that he actually adds a little bit of green to his grays, because the green reads really nicely as a shadow for steel. And I didn't do that in this case. But it gives the steel kind of a worn, dirty look, which is really cool, and something that I eventually want to do. But I'm not going to experiment with that right now. I just want to get this guy painted. Especially now that, like, the most difficult stuff is done. If I had any brains, what I would do is I would go ahead and spray him now with a lacquer, so that even if I made any mistakes or anything, I could, you know, still have that protective layer preventing me from absolutely stripping all of the model. But unfortunately, I didn't think that far, so I guess here we go. Here goes nothing. And there goes the doggy. I can hear him barking. Now, actually, even though I painted this to be orange like the rest of his fist, I think I want everything on his fist at this point to be like this metallic black, because it's just more fun to look at. So, like, his palm is going to remain, or it's actually his palm is going to be black because it's going to be textured. And I think for that black, I'm going to keep it like a black. I'm not going to add any blue to it to separate it from, like, the metallic black that I am creating. And I also think that for these, like, knuckle pistons that he has on him, I'm going to paint those to be, I don't know, I'll figure it out, but they're gonna look neat. I think, no, I don't know, I'll have to look at some inspiration to see what I can do for these things, because I don't think they should be the same color. I think they should stand out as, like, separate and distinct, so I might keep them a darker shade and let the rest of it bump up to, like, a silver, or I might do the opposite and make it more of a silver and keep everything else at, like, an industrial metallic black. Who knows? I don't knows. There we go. There we go. And just try not to make any mistakes on this fairly high effort paint job on the armor. Just hope and pray. It's looking okay. Fantastic. Okay. Gonna do that. Gonna do some of that. Gonna do some of that. Who knows? I might No, I was about to say I might actually be lazy, and I might dry brush metallic paint over all this to make it, to just give it like an edge of metal seeping or leaking out from underneath, peeking out underneath the paint job. But I don't think I want to go lazy with this guy. He's my favorite model. He's the head of my army, and so it just feels wrong to cheat on him, cheat with him a bit, cheat on him. Okay, let's go across like so. I'm gonna move to a smaller brush for this. His belt buckle's just a little too titchy and in too weird a place. Okay. Same thing with the leather on his belt. That's just gonna be a straight black leather to avoid some complications. Time is it? 11:12? Okay, so that means in about 45 minutes I'm probably going to clean up and have lunch. Right now, I'm just going to work on giving this guy a whole lot more personality. I've mentioned it before, but in general, as like self-deprecating as this is going to sound, I call this part the ugly phase, because like with so much of the base coat still sticking out, a lot of him just looks real goofy, and none of the colors look like they match. And this is the point where usually I'm like, man, I did a terrible job, I want to start over. But he's clearly not done yet, you know what I mean? There's so much more of him to paint, so it feels wrong to be like, I should start over, because he's ugly. What's happening is that since I haven't painted the rest of him, his colors haven't come in to coordinate yet and provide that contrast. So what I need to do is, as I like to say, trust the ugly phase and continue working on the rest of the model's colors, and eventually, when he's all done, he's going to look freaking brilliant. And more often than not, that's what's come to pass. Because, you know, especially when you're painting base coats and whatnot, the model tends to look a little bit goofy. And as you continue covering up your mistakes and correcting them, the model looks increasingly better, right? So it probably is best to just not trust the voice in the back of your head that's telling you to start over or to stop because it doesn't look good, and to just push through. Because you're only on like step 1 of a 20-step process. And I think in some ways, I guess that's also a life lesson. Don't trust your brain when it tells you to stop pursuing a creation. It's lying to you. But then, of course, you get that addendum of like, in certain situations, and then it gets all screwy. But I'm not thinking about that right now. Okie dokie, let's hit this little bitty bob up here. Okay, so something else I always forget is the angle of the brush is crucially important. Having it at the wrong angle means you're going to miss brush strokes, you're going to miss spots, etc., etc. So you really want to go ahead and angle the brush so that each of your brush strokes gets like, I don't know what to call it, optimal coverage. Otherwise, you're just kind of fighting yourself. Okay, we're going to hit all of this. want all of this to be metallic, or at the very least black. There we go. That's gonna be fine. And also, while I'm here, all the little greeblies around his head, all these sensors and lights and scopes. Add some more contrast to the look of the model. Including, heck, including the weird little harness he has around his head that's blocking off his ear. And this will give me a nice hard boundary regarding his skin tone. Okay, I think for all of the precise bits of metal, that's about as good as I'm gonna get, and now I can kind of move back into, oh, I didn't do that part on the back of the camera. I can move back into the larger brush. Okay. So into the larger brush so that I can hit some of the larger bits with a little bit more speed and you know, I guess I'll call it convenience. I forget the exact word. But I don't need to have that precise a brush when hitting some of these larger swaths. All that's going to do is slow me down. And that was something that I had a difficult time convincing a friend, because they had a decent amount of anxiety about making sure that their models were perfect. And so they wanted to make sure every brush stroke was perfect, and they got into such minutia that they were using like an insane detail brush from Army Painter, which is meant for highlights and eyes, to paint their entire models. And so it was taking them forever to paint, and they weren't having fun. And it's like, that's because you're trying to paint a fence with a model painting brush, dude. You're trying to paint the side of a building with a 1-inch brush when you could be using a roller. And admittedly, it took me a while to figure that out too, but once I did, it made my painting process so much more enjoyable, because I didn't feel like I was spending huge amount of times on these small little bits. Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I first started painting, I was like, I want to make sure every one of these is perfect, and they all look great. So, I originally, with like the Tau Fire Warriors that I got, I originally painted them all with, like, them separate, and then I would put them together. And I forget, sub-assemblies, that's what it's called. And it didn't make them look any better, because I was just doing base coat since I didn't know anything, but it sure took forever and made them a whole lot less fun to paint. And it wasn't until much more recently that I started putting them together, base coating them, and then filling in the details that were visible. But you know, everyone's on their own journey. I just got pinged. What did I get pinged for? Cool. Good news from a friend. I love good news from a friend. Okay, back to what I was doing. One of my friends is also considering making the career transition. So, they've been worried about the financials of like paying for the new training courses and the new classes, and they just found out that their parents were like, heck, I'll pay for it. And it's just like, whoa! Whoa, whoa, whoa! So good for them. I'm really glad that their career transition is going to be made a whole lot easier by the fact that their parents are willing to financially support them on this. Admittedly, they're probably looking at it as a combination of things, you know, love of their child, that kind of thing, knowing that this will be better for their family, and this will make their child's life better. Those are all the hopes, right? Like, I know if I had an offspring, a son or a daughter, or a non-binary child, or whatever other preference or orientation they end up being, and they're like, hey, parental figure. I trained for this thing, and I did this thing, and it's causing me severe health issues. And so I'd like to enter in training to do this other thing that I feel like would be better for me. I would be like, heck yeah, how can I help? What can I do for you? And I don't know, that's just kind of how I look at it. I'm not saying everyone needs to agree with me on that. Okay, I think by and large, the black coating on this guy, the black base coating is done. I think mayhaps if I really wanted to, oh wait, no, no, he's pretty much done everything. Okay, so he's got the other leg cable that is also metallic, and then I can move away from this stuff and I can start using just a flat black to do a lot of his power glove stuff, right? I think that's what I was going to do. Power glove, his regular glove. Just a lot of parts that need to have black on them, but I didn't want to have that like blue undertone for the metallic. So let's go ahead and shove a paintbrush up his butt. That way I can hit this bit with just a straight matte black. Okay, I can't really see it from there, so I'm assuming that I can't really hit that, so it's not worth my time. But I can hit, hopefully, I don't even know if you guys can see it, under the back of the knee where his body glove is visible. I have no clue what it would be called in today's parlance, but I love the term body glove. I love the fact that a lot of 40K's names for things are just ridiculously overimportant sounding names for very common objects. And body glove is just like a shining example of that. Oh yeah, he's got this little metal buckle over here that I can work on. So we're gonna hit that. And again, right angles. Having a good angle for your brush eliminates or greatly reduces the chance of mistake. Okay, yeah, that definitely makes him look better, because last time I didn't color this little bit of his body glove in under his torso, and it ended up creating a weird looking aspect. Can I hit this one under the thigh? Yes, I can. Beautiful. Gonna get the one in the crook of the arm. I am holding my mouth in so many weird different ways to make sure that I'm painting this at a good angle. And if you've never heard that joke, that's a huge part of painting, is making sure you're holding your mouth at the right angle. If you've ever seen anyone paint, it's something they do. Their mouth goes all over the place as they're trying to concentrate and focus in at exactly the right point. Probably out of the vents. That sounds like a good idea, maybe. Let's hit those vents on the bottom down here, which I'm honestly surprised aren't machined a little better, because they just kind of fade awkwardly. But that's okay. Perfect. It looks like I didn't quite get this section of the computer well enough, so we're going to hit that again. And it looks like from another angle I didn't quite hit his one leg cable well enough, so we're going to go ahead and paint back over that again. We'll give that a once over. Yeah, he's starting to come together. Ah, man, that does so much to the model. It makes him look so good. Because my biggest issue, the thing I was most worried about just now, was that everything was just kind of blending together. And the reason why is because even with the high contrast paint job, since it's all behind this maroon base coat, everything just kind of keeps this maroon look to it, and all the cool little features and bits on this character model just don't really stand out. But now that he's starting to get new colors added on, now that he's starting to get much more attention to these distinct spots, it's really starting to show off what this model is. And that's rad. That's super cool. That's really scary that I'm gonna mess this up. Okay, so yeah, like the shoulder pad lightning bolt thing. That one right there. That's gonna be green. I guess now's the time to go ahead and hit this pauldron, which is always like the bane of my existence, because underneath the fist is going to be a white background, and trying to paint white over a black or a dark color is absolutely miserable. So we're gonna do that and hope everything turns out okay. Yeah, the fist looks okay. Now time for the rest of it. Oh goodness. Oh fear. Oh anxiety. And again, this is where moving the model is important for any of you aspiring painters out there. Move the model around the brush. Do not move the brush around the model. If you have found a comfortable angle that you can hold the brush at, then make the model accommodate that angle, not vice versa. Because, you know, when you lose the angle, your hand becomes less comfortable in the painting. And you're more prone to make mistakes on fine points like this one. There we go. That ended up being a whole lot less awful than I thought. And I think the best point, I really shouldn't be doing these because it's going to get hit or flooded by white anyway. But kind of the best point of having these artificial brushes is that the tips have a really bad habit of curling. And normally curling no good, because now you've got a rogue like tip to your brush and it can go all over the place. But in this case, curling very good, because it's allowing the brush to be very isolated and hitting the inside of that ring to make it more distinct. Morning, Aria, how's it going? I'm finished with the armor part of this guy, and now I'm working on all the details, and I am sweating bullets because I don't want to accidentally mark up the finished bits. So I'm giving it all a black base coat, so that when I paint over it, it doesn't have weird color distortion. Which I'm pretty sure is a thing that can happen if you have a different color underneath it. But the dude is really coming together. And I'm pretty jazzed about that. Like, I put just enough highlights for him to be highlighty. All that fun stuff. And as I was mentioning, I was really worried that because of how he looked, that he wasn't going to get enough contrast and all of the elements of him were just going to bleed together. But that's because he had this, like, maroon base coat. And it was causing everything to bleed together. And now that the maroon base coat is getting covered up with, you know, this black base coat, everything's starting to be more visually distinct. So I'm, like, beside myself with joy that he's like, increasingly popping. You know what I mean? I think that's all the major accoutrements. I guess I can paint this black too, which will really help with the leather. And it'll look okay. Yeah, I keep talking about it, but I feel it's important. Trust the ugly phase. You know what I mean? Trust the phase where you're not sure if the model's going to turn out right because of your color scheme ideas. Because eventually it will turn out right. You just got to trust that what you're doing is going to work. So that's kind of what's happening now. And especially with more complex paint jobs, that's kind of what happens a lot. So, hopefully, this is going to work out okay. And I changed the camera angle again because I was tired of hitting it with my head last night. And so now I've got it hanging from a ceiling joist above me. And unfortunately, it's meaning that, like, it's nowhere near as sharp as it could be. But that's because, you know, the lens on a camera phone uses a digital zoom instead of an actual zoom. So it can only compensate so much. And it's yet another reason why I have an incredibly strong desire to buy an actual camera that I can hook up with an HDMI cord instead of using this workaround system with Camo Studio. Because the only way I can get the camera close enough to get sharp pictures, sharp imagery, is by having the camera physically close, and then I keep hitting it, and it keeps getting in the way. So hopefully, soon, I will be able to afford a new camera with which to do that. And then the image quality of my stream is going to explode. At least, that is the hope. Okay. Trying to think, is there anything else that I should paint black? Well, probably his cape. While this maroon is nice, I kind of want his cape to have a cooler color, and that cooler color will rely on being on a black base. And again, I don't want to get sloppy with this. I don't want to mess this up. So I'm going to be very, very careful, hopefully, with how I place the paintbrush near finished surfaces. Hey, Mr. Motorhead, thank you. Looks clean, I appreciate it. I did Pixel 1.0. Turns out that attempt was nearly 8 years ago. That's a long time. That's a really long time. That's before I was into the Warhams. 8 years ago, I was still very heavily couched into the Dungeons and Dragons, and I wasn't even thinking about painting models. But yeah, thank you, Mr. Motorhead. Thank you for complimenting him on looking real clean, considering I feel like he's a mess. I did a blended high contrast paint job on him, and I'm still not super confident in my ability to blend colors together, but I think he turned out pretty okay. And now that I'm done with that, I'm trying to get the rest of the parts of the model, which include like the cape and the pauldrons and the trim. And before I want to hit any of that, I want to return it all to the same base coat of like a black, so that I can get a more consistent true color across the whole. But yeah, I stripped this model last night or yesterday, and I think I ended up doing the original orange base coat before I started streaming. And then I went from the orange base coat to an Averland Sunset layer last night. And then this morning, I've added Dorn Yellow to the Averland Sunset as a highlight color. And after that, I started working on doing everything else. So, this guy's been on a bit of a journey. And I'm beginning to understand how, like, the Golden Demon painters and the really high-level painters can spend literally days on a model of this size, because my blends are not very clean, to be honest. They look good because of the low resolution of the camera, but they're very rough. So, I'm proud of them. And I'm not going to complain. but I can definitely see how like master painters have to spend a lot more time making sure the blends are consistent and smooth across the model. Okay, there we... Nope, still not it. Yep, Imperial Fist. This is Tor Garadon. He was released with 8th edition's Codex supplement, I believe, and he was supposed to be the special character for the Imperial Fists, which I think is really cool that they created. I'm trying so hard not to mess this guy up and mess the paint jobs up, but I didn't want him to just be like the typical Imperial Fist color, because I felt like it made him blend into the rest of the army too much. And I think I've talked about it many times at this point, but my I redid my Death Guard combat patrol because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do a better job than my initial paint job from when I started the hobby. So I sold the original one to a buyer in like Taiwan or Singapore. Hey Snow Twig, hey Corehawk. Hey guys, how's it going? Thank you for the raid, I appreciate it. I am right now painting a high contrast version of an Imperial Fist, because normally he's done with just kind of a yellow base coat, and then you work on him from there. Hey guys, how's it going? Thank you very much for the raid, I appreciate it. But I decided I wanted him to really stand out, so I painted him like a dark red and worked my way up from an orange, and that way, compared to some of the normal troops that I've got, like, he looks really, really, really distinct. Like, if you compare this guy, who's just kind of sprayed over with a yellow, to this guy, you're going to notice this guy on the battlefield, or on the game board. And that's kind of the whole point. And I finished the crazy high contrast stuff earlier today, and now I'm going to start working on doing all of this detail work that I'm now painting black, so that way it all has the same kind of base coat to work off of. And now I'm getting really nervous because I don't want to mess up my paint job. It's definitely becoming a thing for me. Oh yeah, I should probably do his purity seal as well, shouldn't I? But yeah, how are you guys doing? How was your stream? I saw that you were streaming earlier, but unfortunately I was still waking up and I didn't see what exactly you were doing. What kind of fun shenanigans were you guys having? I saw something about low resolution, I believe. Okay, let's go ahead and paint the rope black so that it has a really nice dark shadow when I fill that in. There we go. You do low poly models. We were working on various assets. Yeah, I've been on your stream a couple times, and I think that your setup looks really, really cool. And I love low poly stuff. I grew up in, like, Highlight is probably the arcade machine that is still underway. That's awesome. That's really cool. I'm gonna have to pop in one time and check that out, because I grew up in, like, the PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64 era. So, I vibe with that really hard. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's an artist out there named, I think, Speedo Sausage. And he's known for doing, like, adult content, but he also is known for doing just... Are links allowed? You could show? Yeah, let's do that. I don't have any real system to pop it open, so it's probably just going to show up in a browser. Oh, Discord app. Boom. Oh, yes. And it's Skate or Die. Man, that's a reference. Window capture. That one. Bam! Golly, I haven't thought about that game in a long time. I used to play that game all the time with my little sister on the Nintendo. That's so cool. I also love the colors. I miss that era of just, like, incredibly garish neon colors because it just pops so much and it's so distinct. That looks fantastic. I love it. I'm gonna stare at that for a minute longer. I'm not wearing my glasses, so I've got to really kind of look at it. Yeah, that brings me back. Oh man, does that bring me back. I miss arcades, man. I used to live in Northern Virginia next to one of the, I think it was like the longest mall on the East Coast, in Potomac Mills Mall. And they used to have this huge arcade that I remember going to as a kid a lot. And they had things like, not Skate or Die, but they had, you know, the old Simpsons arcade game and the old X-Men one, and they had things like Area 51, and they didn't have the Jurassic Park game. That was a Chuck E. Cheese. But they just had a whole bunch of stuff like that. And I remember spending a lot of my summers in there and thinking it was the coolest thing in the world. I said Skate or Die, referencing the old game with the closed captioning turned to Skate or Die, so we went with that. Yeah, exactly. It's close enough that people who know, and I think that's freaking neato. What was I working on? Oh yeah, I need a green. That's awesome. But yeah, the highlight of that time for me, at least, was when that arcade, X-Men arcade, was such a jam. I know, right? And I remember in high school, when emulators started getting big, that they had the MAME emulator, right? And you could play things like the X-Men arcade game, and Super WrestleMania, because I was a really big wrestling fan at the time. And just wishing I had, you know, $20 to blow at just those games and nothing else. And then, of course, on the PlayStation Plus, they had, like, the Simpsons arcade and all that kind of stuff. I miss that era of video games. But, I think the absolute highlight of that era for me in that arcade was that they got a Virtual On machine. And I don't know if you know, actually, let me see if I can find it. I don't know if you know Virtual On. But Virtual On had that really cool system on arcade where you actually sat in like a cockpit, and oh, none of these look like it. What happened? The one that I had, the one that I got to play in was like completely enclosed. Am I misremembering? It doesn't matter. Virtual On was so cool. Let me see. Because the way it was set up where I lived, it was like completely enclosed, and the other person sat in an opposite one, also was completely enclosed, and so it felt like you were two different people in two different cockpits actually fighting each other. Yeah, I was born in 87, so I'm fairly young, I think. But yeah, I remember this thing so well. I remember getting to play it once because it was a really expensive arcade machine, and immediately getting my ass beat. And so I got basically one game, 1978. So yeah, you were definitely more of an old hat. One of the old respected veterans. But yeah, I remember getting to play Virtual On once, getting my ass beat with it, and then kind of never playing it again because I felt like that was a huge waste of like $2 or however much it was at the time. And it was just like, I don't want to spend that kind of money just to get destroyed. Okay, let's see. But yeah, I know like in Japan they still do the big arcades. And in America, at least where I am, they've kind of gone the way of the dodo. So you don't really see arcades anymore. And the ones you do see are just sad. It's kind of like going to a Chuck E. Cheese now. I gotta head out for the day. Have a great stream. The Mini is looking excellent as always. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you again for the raid. I appreciate it. We're gonna see. I think this is probably not supposed to be green, but I don't care. This is an interesting take on this on the fairy theme. There we go. But yeah, nostalgia memories. Okay, now I got one last green thing to do here, I think. Actually, no, I forgot. I tend to like making the lenses green because red lenses tend to be kind of stereotypical. And that's fine if you like the red lenses. But for me, the green, especially against the yellow, pops a whole lot more. So whenever I paint an Imperial Fist, I try and give them like green lenses everywhere, so that it really shows up against the model. Like, see, you can really see that, as opposed to, if I were to try and paint everything red, it would all kind of blend together. What else do I need to do on this guy? I probably need to get some white. Actually, no, I'm going to continue base coating. I'll start doing the blending and the crazy stuff a little bit later. But yeah, how's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? Again, I appreciate the raid. Thank you for being here. this is supposed to be a fairly chill stream, and so that's what I try and go for. Generally, I just kind of paint whatever's on my mind, and unfortunately, that leads to me being a little scatterbrained. And so one day you might get me painting something like an Imperial Fist and a Space Marine, and another day I might have found this really cool sculpt that I wanted to print out and paint, so I might be painting something completely different. I don't think I've officially completed a paint job. Doing well? That's cool. That's good. We need to have more doing good nowadays. Life is too stressful. But I don't think I've actually completed a paint job on this channel. I usually get to a stop point, and then I finish it off channel. And that allows me to fix any details I might have missed. Because normally I have the camera situated in such a way that I can't see everything as well as I normally would. If I were just painting kind of by myself. And I have a Discord that's not super active, but it was recommended to me that I create one so that people can show off their sculpts and show off their paints, their prints and whatnot, and their paints. And especially because I've been inactive due to health reasons, it's been relatively inactive. But usually that's where progress shots go. That's where, hey, look at, you know, what I've painted today goes. And all in all, it's just kind of chill. Now that I'm no longer dealing with the health issues, I'm trying to kind of rebuild my my viewer base, because it's been like, I don't know how long it's been. It feels like it's been forever. A month, a year. It's been a while since I've streamed regularly. So a lot of my momentum is gone because the algorithm is what it is. So my goal for the next few months is to just get back to streaming regularly and providing a chill place for people to hang out. I feel like I got a really fun compliment last night because someone who joined the stream, who was something of a regular, was like, yeah, I'm here. I've been lurking for a while, but I'm also falling asleep on and off. And I was like, awesome. Having the stream that people can fall asleep to is a huge compliment, because that's the kind of vibe I want. I want this to be nap time. Okay. Gonna need to do more layers of the red, because putting it on a black background has made it very, very dark. And that's kind of exactly what I wanted. I want there to be a lot of contrast between the brightness and the depth, the darkness of this red when I start adding in these highlights. Yeah, this guy's really starting to come together. Yeah, it's been a while since I've talked to some of you guys. I hope things are going well. Now that I am in between jobs, I've definitely been able to catch more Doigan Swift, which in itself has been really nice because I definitely enjoy watching their streams. But the other thing that I've been kind of obsessing over is Baldur's Gate 3. And I've talked about it a bit on the channel, but I've played a whole ton of that game, and then I got my friends into it, and we're playing again. Did you see the progress pics you shared at Atsu's server last night? No, I have not. I went to bed. I passed out basically after I left Atsu's channel, Atsu's stream, so I have not seen them. But you know what? Now's as good a time as any. I should go ahead and give those a look. And I also forgot, I was going to send you some pictures of like devices for recording or something, and I don't remember what they were. So if you could remind me, I could DM you the things I'm supposed to be sending you. This is not what I'm looking for. Is it art? Am I looking in art? Oh, I'm looking in art. Yeah, that Turbo Dork paint really does wonders. Give me a second. Let me get these pulled up in my browser, and then we can share them for anyone else who might be interested in. Boom. look at that. This is a L'Oreal, right? This is a L'Oreal, and it looks freaking awesome. The Turbo Dork color shift is such a great look, especially for a beetle, right? I think that's probably the coolest place to use it, is you just got this great, like, bug shell that is going to be, you know, luminescent anyway, and now you've given it this really cool appearance. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that looks really good. That's fantastic. And what's going to be great is you've got this great contrast between, it looks like that's supposed to be the drider on top. No, those are just the branches that are coming off it. Even so, same thing. You've got these great contrasts happening between the dark blue and the brown and the green. That's going to look so freaking cool when you're done with it. Man, I can't wait to see that thing when it's done. Okay. Back to this guy. That's going to be freaking awesome. I really want to get into Age of Sigmar minis. I'm so excited at the idea of buying into Age of Sigmar and getting the minis and eventually starting an army? Eventually having enough to play the Age of Sigmar against friends? But that'll have to be a long-term thing. I think my biggest problem is that, like, the minis I want to collect are not the minis whose armies I want to make. Because, the Harbinger of Decay, I think is his name. He's one of the Maggotkin of Nurgle. And I think they based him off of a Frank Frangetta piece. And so he looks freaking amazing. But I have zero desire to start a Nurgle army because I've already got the Death Guard. So it's like, I don't know. Maybe I will anyway, because, you know, everyone needs a great unclean one. Everyone needs to have some horrifying, you know, monstrosity that you don't want to be within 10 feet of. Okay, now we're going to mix some orange into the red, which hopefully has not dried yet. And by mixing this orange, I can get a little bit more of a highlight color across these reds. Because you can see the reds look pretty good, but unfortunately, they kind of blend into everything. So what I want to do now is add some brightness where the sun would most likely hit it. I have no idea how many people who are still on my channel right now actually do the mini painting. But one thing that they talk about a lot in mini painting is creating contrast between the models' high points and low points. And I mean, it makes sense when you think about it, but because, you know, the models are so tiny, they can't really simulate light very well. And so spots that should have deep shadows really don't, and spots that should have really bright high spots really don't, right? So when you're painting a model like this, you don't have to do this, by the way, right? When you're painting models, you can just do whatever you want with them, and it's going to be perfectly valid because it's your dang model. But if you want them to have really deep contrast and you want them to really pop when you look at them, then you've got to simulate it by using abnormally bright colors on the high spots and incredibly dark colors in the low spots. And what that'll do is it'll draw the eye to the high spots while also creating this wonderful contrast to the low spots, and it'll simulate that depth and that reflection. And honestly, that's been one of the most difficult things for me to do as a painter, is learn where the light's going to hit and learn where to simulate all that stuff. And there's obviously, as with anything else, there's varying degrees of depth of how much you want to get into it. But I've kind of fallen in love with the technical aspect of this painting, so I am going what would normally be considered way above and beyond the level of quality that someone would want to have to put these on a table and make them fight each other. Right? Most people aren't going to spend 10 to 15 hours on a single model to try and make it look as lifelike as possible. And I remember hearing a while ago from a really good painter that at the competition level, when you're trying to make them look like a display piece, like something you would display, is that you're trying to simulate real life in miniature. So to get your models to do that, you need to really exaggerate some of the features on the model. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to give the edges of his pauldrons little reflections so that they show up better and they read better visually to someone who's trying to study the model and look at it. Speaking of, I found out today, or yesterday, that apparently Golden Demon judges, the people who judge the models for like the Golden Demon entries, art awards, they are encouraged not to take into account the bases. And that just seems like a lie to me, because the base is such a huge part of the miniature. And I feel like a lot of miniatures that would be absolutely stunning with a plain base just look worse than the ones that have a whole lot of love and care put into the base of the model, because it helps like tell the story that the model is supposed to be telling, right? So I don't know how true that is. I think I was watching a Zumi Kito video and he was talking about that, and that was one reason why he felt like his model didn't do very well when he put it in competition, because he painted this cool Krieg model, but he put it on a very flat, boring base, and so it ended up just not looking good. Whoops, speaking of not looking good, that's way too thick a stripe. But I don't know, man. I don't know enough about the painting competition stuff. It's just something I would eventually like to get into. Okay. That being said, try and hit some more of these with that bright red, so hopefully it will transition better. A little bit of that. A little bit of that. Speaking of, what time is it? It's almost time for me to have lunch. It's almost noon o'clock where I am, which means it's about lunchtime for me. And also about time for me to start studying, because I decided this morning I was going to take the morning to continue painting this guy and making him look all pretty, and then I was going to take the afternoon to study more for my certification. Now, honestly, I'm pretty happy with where he is now. And I don't know how well you can see it because of just how bright the light is, but like his chest plate right here, I've given it some high contrast so that it's really dark at the bottom, but where the light would hit it, you can see it's a whole lot brighter. I've tried to do a little bit on his shoulder pad. I'm eventually going to work some of this in on like his fists and some of the other bits that I haven't really covered. But the whole point is to make it have as much separation between the high points and the low points as possible. So this is where I got today. I think he's looking pretty good. And eventually he's going to go on a scenic base. Now, normally with the game pieces, since they're, game pieces, they've got to fit on a certain sized base. So poor Garadon came with, I think, a 40mm base. And this one I custom made. He originally came with this base that I eventually put texture paste on. But I noticed that something I really hated about it was that it kind of blocked part of him off. Like, he's supposed to be standing, immobile on a bastion. It's a heroic pose, but it cuts off a good amount of his foot and his lower leg. So I made this base using corkboard and just another base, and I spray primed it, and I painted it to make it look a whole lot more like concrete, right? So hopefully, when he stands on this base, he can still show that he's supposed to be, standing tall amidst a hail of gunfire or whatever ridiculous story you want to tell. But at the same time, since he's like a display piece for me, I wanted to make him look even more impressive. So I usually magnetize the bottom of these so they're easier to carry, but I made this part of the base, which is, I think, using a 50mm or 60mm one, and I made it so the magnets snap together. And so when I eventually put him on this one, he's going to have a whole lot more in front of him to look impressive. And I'm probably going to fill this in with some mud and dirt and probably some you know, grass tufts growing out of it or something. Something to break up the monotony of the gray. I'm not exactly sure yet. This was just kind of a baseline, but eventually I'll do something more interesting. Until then, this is where I am with Mr. Tor Garadon. And hopefully he's going to look really cool and stand out a whole lot when I'm done. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for me. I'm going to see if there's anyone online to send you guys to. Because I have a bad habit of just, like, being done streaming. And that's not necessarily all that fun. Huh, it doesn't really look like it. You guys got any recommendations? Thank you, appreciate it, Mr. Motorhead. You guys got any recommendations on who I can send y'all to? Because my streaming list is, or my follows, is all, like, offline. I mean, I've got Midnight Sumo on, but that's literally just broadcasts of sumo wrestling. And I'm not sure if any of you guys would be interested in watching that. What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? Let's... Games demos, just chatting. Software and game development. Let's look at what's happening over there.
Of what you do.
Oh my goodness.
That doesn't contradict to the fact that I almost don't prepare to my streams.
I have no idea what's happening with any of these, so we're gonna go away from that. Categories, clips for like drops enable, fighting games. Let's see if I can send you to a more interesting Warhammer painter than me. It looks like Wargames Spirit is painting, and he's doing. Oh, what model is he doing? Well, that's Apex Legends. That doesn't help me. Oh, he's doing Morgan Raw. Yeah, I'm gonna send you guys to him. Wargames Spirit. I have a cool VTuber artist that's currently playing Celeste. Oh, let's do that one then. At /rate. Whoops. Whoa. What happened? There we go. I hit the spacebar at the wrong time. Raid. Yasunde. Okie dokie. We're gonna raid them. Thank you very much. Okay, have a good one, guys. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you later. Bye-bye. Right now. Boom.